ESPN Bet is doing about as well as anyone could expect from a fairly late entrance into a hugely competitive market space. It was predictable, like Chris Berman's nickname usage during an NFL highlights package.
Danny Erie Cannell of the Giants.
In fact, the only real surprise here are folks acting surprised about ESPN Bet's underwhelming first quarter financial performance. If anything, it harkens back to another failed ESPN venture that was launched as part of Disney's efforts to transform the worldwide leader in sports from a cable network to a brand. That didn't quite work out as planned, churning out new editions of Jock Jams and slapping your logo on whatever PS1 game will have you. Well, it only gets a company so far. Full disclosure, ESPN MLS Game Night was actually kind of a good game. I mean, it's just a reskinned version of Winning 11 Soccer, and that's obviously not the worst thing in the world. And a partnership with Konami was far better than teaming up with Penn Entertainment, a cut-rate gambling company that has the audacity to put entertainment in its name despite being some 30 or so minutes away from this hotbed of excitement. That is neither here nor there. I am Cheyenne Hollis. This is the touchbacks and the shortcomings of ESPN Bet while they mirror this failed product from the worldwide leader in sports.
As we prepare for the grand opening of the ESPN Zone restaurant.
ESPN Zone was not a bad idea, nor was it a poorly executed one. It was just way too late to the party of theme restaurant entertainment center hybrids. When the first one opened up in mid-1998, the concept hadn't jumped the shark just yet, but the pathways for success were narrower than they had been earlier in the 1990s. By the way, around this same time period, WWF, which would go on to become WWE, was waxing its skis and setting out a ramp to get this concept to jump the shark with the eventual opening of WWF New York. That would open in 1999, and not even the pull of being able to hang out with the Big Show during WWF pay-per-view events was enough to keep this, or really the entire genre of themed restaurant entertainment centers alive. Back to the ESPN Zone, when that first one did open mid-1998, well, what success even looked like was still a bit of an unknown. Established players were consolidating their position, others like Planet Hollywood were bankrupting themselves trying to stay competitive. ESPN Zone needed something different, something unique to stand out in a very crowded market space. A soft launch of the concept that Disney World dubbed ESPN Club didn't exactly set the world alight when it first opened in 1996. Disney and the network went back to the drawing board to reconfigure what exactly the concept should entail. The second version was called ESPN Grill, but that would eventually be changed to ESPN Zone because of some loose sports affiliations with the word zone, like, Strike Zone, and he's in the zone, etc. Talk surrounding the project before the first opening of the ESPN Zone featured some legendary 1990s bluster. Here's what Bill Freeman, the vice president and general manager of ESPN Zone, told the Baltimore Sun at the time. Being in the zone, or being in ESPN Zone in this case, would always be a special experience and sometimes a once-in-a-lifetime experience. That is a fantastic quote for a newspaper, but the reality of the situation was they were opening a sports bar with a lot of ESPN logos and thematic elements included. No amount of Kenny Mayne zingers was ever going to change that fact. The first ESPN Zone opened in 1998, a few blocks away from Camden Yards as part of Baltimore's redeveloped Inner Harbor. Another one opened in Chicago in 1999. All told, there were 9 ESPN Zones from coast to coast, with all but one opening in 2001 or earlier. By 2010, all but 2 had closed down, and those 2 were located in Southern California. The final ESPN Zone, the one located at the downtown Disney District at the Disneyland Resort in Anaheim, it was actually right around the corner from Goofy's Kitchen, if you're familiar with that part of Disneyland. It shuttered in 2018. In the early days of the ESPN Zone, there was quite a bit of promotion for it on the mothership. There were events and live shots. They even broadcast some competitive eating events from the ESPN Zone. But by the middle of the 2000s, the entire concept, the entire chain had become nothing but an afterthought. Now, here's the deal. The ESPN Zone wasn't bad. I don't really have much to say negative about the concept or its execution. Overpriced? For sure, it was definitely overpriced, and some of the laughable dynamic pricing they rolled out for big games was really annoying. $10 per person per hour was ridiculous, especially because I don't even drink alcohol. There's only a certain amount of loaded potato skins a human body can consume in a 3-hour window. Oh shit, the game went to overtime? Can I get, I don't know, 3 more Shirley Temple so I don't lose this seat and miss the ending of the game? Oh brother, that just, Alright, the restaurant chain is closed. I will let that beef go. What ESPN Zone really struggled with, though, was differentiation. There was nothing truly ESPN about the ESPN Zone. There was nothing you couldn't get there that wasn't already available at like a Dave & Buster's or Buffalo Wild Wings or Chili's that had TVs in it. The assumption was the ESPN brand was so strong and harbored such loyalty that people would support it no matter what. But once you got past the logos and name, ESPN Zone didn't really offer much in the way of substance that was unique to it. Some 26 years after the first ESPN Zone opened its doors, ESPN Bet seems to be charting a near identical course, albeit one with far greater stakes and much less early success. For all the marketing, all the product placement, and all the annoying on-air ad reads, can anyone truly say what makes ESPN Bet different from any other betting app already in existence? Elle Duncan being in a commercial, or Scott Van Pelt and Stanford Steve reminding us that the app exists for the 1164th time doesn't actually sell the product or even explain what the product does better than its competitors. Then again, the product simply seems to be an ESPN logo and some other brand tie-ins on a generic sports betting app. It's more or less the same mistake that was made with the ESPN Zone, but you replace the food and the games and televisions with sports wagering. I always go back to the announcement of the deal between ESPN and Penn Entertainment because even at that moment, this seemed like it was going to be a huge waste of time and money for just about everyone involved. To better understand that, we need to gaze out over the sports betting landscape in the early second half of 2023. A few weeks before that big deal took place, Fox Bet had actually announced it was closing. That definitely should have been a huge red flag for gambling companies and sports media outfits, thinking that a popular brand would equate to success in the sports betting space. Honestly, there were quite a few reasons Fox Bet did fail, but visibility and brand support were not among them. The application gained next to no traction despite a tremendous amount of visibility among viewers and readers of Fox Sports content. Penn Entertainment watched Fox Bets go belly up and then said to themselves, all we need to do with our crappy sports betting application is slap on an ESPN coat of paint.
Yeah, that's a ticket.
The original agreement and eventual rollout of ESPN Bet was curious to say the least. I fully understand the allure of using a big-time brand in the sports space like ESPN. It seems fairly logical on the surface. But it becomes massively illogical when you consider something similar had failed spectacularly just days and weeks earlier. Fox Bet was plastered all over sports broadcasts on the Fox family of networks, as well as anything else related to it. Ultimately, FanDuel and DraftKings had the first mover advantage, while Caesar Sportsbook and BetMGM have the, Vegas prestige that some punters like. There was no room for Fox Bet without a huge investment that would need to be conducted over years, and even then, that did not guarantee success. It still needed a hook. It still needed to be something different than what was already out there. Giving away free bets or matching deposits or whatever the case may be is not a business strategy. All it does is create the expectation that you'll continue to hand out free stuff in perpetuity. Ask JCPenney's what happens when you stop doing that. That brings us back to ESPN and the use of the brand on the Penn Entertainment Sportsbook app. There was no reason to believe that the results here would be anything different than what had already been seen. Seriously, Penn Entertainment had made little headway with its Barstool sports betting offering, and all that decision to work with them did was put the company further behind in the race for bettors. The early results as it relates to this new endeavor are more the same. Now look, here's the thing. With ESPN, they don't really lose anything with this agreement. It's a licensing deal, almost a no-lose situation. Yes, certain benchmarks and performance targets can unlock more money, but really, this is all upside for them, well, apart from having the ESPN brand associated with a bad fifth-choice sports betting company. That is somewhat similar to ESPN Zone. Remember, that was a Disney idea as it looked to push out brand synergy, whatever that means. The ESPN Zones were run by a completely different company under the umbrella of Disney. That isn't to say the network didn't care about ESPN Zone or didn't want it to succeed, but it was not priority 1A. What ESPN Zone and now ESPN Bet is showing us is that for some misguided reason, there are folks out there to this day who believe slapping on an ESPN logo will create a following and instill some sort of success, that it is the tide that lifts all ships. History, though, shows us otherwise. Meanwhile, the network will promote the crap out of this inferior product people have mostly rejected now that the freebies have been tapped out. Their logo and licensing here is not going to change anything, just like it couldn't change the fact ESPN Baseball Tonight for Sega Genesis is a truly awful sports video game. For us viewers who simply just want to watch sports, we still are going to get force-fed an almost endless number of awkward ad reads, digital logos all over broadcast, and crappy programs encouraging us to use an app no one wanted or asked for. At least for the next year or two. If history here is any indication, as it was with ESPN Zone, at some point the entire thing will slowly be phased out after failing to gain any real traction before dying a long, slow, and not particularly memorable death. Thank you for watching this video. If you would like to know more about why Bally's and sports has been a match made in hell, well, video in the upper right hand corner of your screen is the place to go. Until next time, I'm Cheyenne Hollis, this is The Touchback, and as always, hashtag take it out to the 25.